Welcome to NationalOpinionNews.com. That's news with a Z. Real talk, no fluff, opinions that matter. Hi, I'm your host for today, Pastor William Hudson, along with our national commentators, Robert McCain, DeAndre Taylor, and Lois Pope. Today we're going to be dealing with the subject of living in today's culture. What can be done about it? Man, I'm telling you, our culture is just really out of control.
And culture is such a sensitive topic.
Yeah, I'm excited about today's topic.
I cannot wait so we can dig into what people are thinking in these cultures.
Yeah, when you talk about culture, you really need to define it. Because culture is, the life of an entire society, which really covers a large spectrum. It deals with dress, and language, religion, the norms of behavior, immorality. I mean, believe me, the way things are today is nothing like it was 30 years ago.
No, not even.
Right. Today we watched a war on our TVs. 30 years ago we didn't watch, violent live things on our TV. We watched Baghdad get blown up.
Yeah,
right
we thought it was
on
a
our
movie.
TV. Right.
Well, and that's funny that you mentioned movies, because I think the way that our culture has changed is directly affected because of the type of movies we watch and the type of music that we listen to.
Yeah, music and movies definitely can change a culture.
Oh yeah, it changes the way that you accept things, the way that you dress, the way that you talk. I mean, 10 years ago even, not even 20, not even 10 years ago, we wasn't disrespecting our women the way that we do today.
Oh yeah, the music really had an effect on that. Cursing and degrading mothers and women is really just kind of pitiful.
You know what? I think the influence is really belittled. Because honestly, anybody out there, if you're driving in your car and you listen to a song that's like really affects you, and you change the way you drive.
Yes, you do.
I mean, just that simple. So of course, if you listen to music that's degrading, music that's hardcore, it's going to affect your life.
And what's so amazing about that point is if you ask a person, does the music affect you? They'll say no.
They'll say no.
It doesn't affect me.
And not even people in the world, the church also. The church, is embracing today's culture when clearly the Word of God says that we are not to be conformed to this world, but to be renewed in our mind. And that's really where the battle is. The battle is raging in the minds of our young people and even in the adults of today.
Yeah, we have to protect our eye gate and our ear gate, because the things that we look at and the things that we listen to. I mean, just think about when you look at sitcoms and you see homosexuals holding hands, they're kissing. So it makes it more widely accepted when you see it every single time you turn on a show.
Yeah, and then, people accept it without really thinking about the dangers behind it.
Yeah.
Sex and lust. I mean, that's like, an everyday thing.
And they say that's them, but don't say how it's affecting them. It's always, oh, that's their problem. That's their problem. But you don't see how it's affecting you.
Right.
Or just kind of like the music, well, that's just music. It's just music. But you don't see how it really affects you in your life.
And you know what? I think when it comes down to culture and when it comes down to those influences, I think it comes down to certain people in these cultures stepping out and doing things that are unacceptable, widely unacceptable. Just like in the homosexuality movement. I remember when it was unacceptable. When it was unacceptable, people constantly come out of the closet. So-and-so came out of the closet. Oh, wow, I didn't know about that. More and more people started doing it. And more people started doing it, become more and more acceptable. And as it becomes more and more acceptable, it becomes more and more part of the culture. So it's like, it's okay.
And the behavior becomes more and more flamboyant.
Yeah, I believe that the thing that hurt the culture first was the music industry. Long before the homosexual agenda really came on the scene,
That's right.
It was the degrading of one another within the society, and that whole thing being accepted, in violence being accepted, and so then people don't look at the repercussions of these things.
Yes.
They don't look at, they look at a video and the guy's got 4 girlfriends and he's, going to go home with this one tonight and he's going to go home with that one the next night and then another one the third night, and then we don't see what happens as a result in the end. They only show you that part of the movie, but they don't show you the end result of it.
Right. And the end result is really found in our society when you look at statistics like 1 in 4 teenage girls between the ages of 12 and 17 has an STD.
Oh my goodness.
That's crazy.
And that's the result of it. The result of it is our kids become sexually active.
Yeah.
Our parents become sexually promiscuous. And they have 2 and 3 kids by 5 and 6 guys, and then they wonder why their kids are pregnant at 13 and 14.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned kids being pregnant at 13 or 14 years old. I think what has to happen is that the parents have to step up.
Yeah.
I mean, bottom line, they're going to have to take a stand. And it's hard because the government have implemented laws and rules that prevent you from almost disciplining your children. You can't even tell them what's right and wrong. You can't, they make laws to where you're 13 and 14 and you can go and have an abortion.
Right.
You don't even have to
Parents
consult
know.
your parents. parent. You know, that's craziness.
That's terrible, and that's really hurting our society.
Yes.
You know, we're living in a culture today that's nothing like it was 30 years ago. Even when they talk about great leaders, and they always have to go way back to, you know, Roosevelt and Martin Luther King. These are men that stood for something of substance, but you know, you rarely hear them talking about anybody from the past, you know, 5 years, 10 years that really stand for anything. You know, P. Diddy.
Well, you know, you talk when you talk about cultural movement, I mean, that is true, and it's funny that you would say P. Diddy, because that's a representation of the cultural leaders of our world today. You know, when we had leaders like Martin Luther King, you know, who stood for something. You know, people followed him, they looked up to him, that was their hero. When your hero is somebody who doesn't really care about you, it's about money, it's about sex, it's about, you know, showing you all the stuff that you want and you'll do anything to get. I mean, it just leads you to down the road to immorality, if that's your leader.
Yeah, you know, we want to talk to those that are listening to the broadcast right now. We encourage you to join in on the conversation. Go online to www.nationalopinionnews.com. That's news with a Z, and blog your comments. We'll be sure to talk about your comments on the air. And when you talk about that, Robert.